FMadd2 second chord. Okay, randomize the setting on the synthesizer to see what would happen. Yeah, I think I like that. That was not bad. I'm a little sick, I'm sorry. I'm much better now than I was before. Imagine if I had to record this on Wednesday, that would have been embarrassing. You remember the Vice episode, right, about vices? Bryan gave me 2 prompts. The first one was the Vice episode. The second one, to which I guess I'm grateful for, is this, a review of the 1997 record Deftones, Around the Fur. Here's the thing. He likes Deftones. This is the first time I've ever listened to Deftones. I listened to Deftones for the first time about 2 hours ago, and now I'm doing this. So I don't have the thing where I normally do where I just talk a wide circle around what the band sort of sounds like and then start talking about the record. No, I have to go all the way in. So, okay, Deftones. So I listened to them the first time, and my first impression is, okay, it's slow and heavy. I don't actually remember what this sounded like because it was 2 hours ago, and I need to listen to a song twice to remember it. I did not do that. It was definitely some chuggity happening. It was some good stuff with the chuggity. Said someone in comments, this was on YouTube, someone in the comments says this is good stuff to lift to. And then there's an end dash, and then I say, oh wow, that's yelling. That must have been when he started screaming, because yes, this is, okay, so Around the Fur combines elements of 90s alternative rock and roll music. There's a lot of grunge in here, I think, and a lot of metal. Fair bit of metal, I think. I believe that's a fair characterization. Bryan will correct me if I'm wrong, and I will apologize to his face. This means a couple things. There's a lot of, the guitars are distorted, and the bass is very, it punches and it sort of follows the guitar when it crunch, that sort of thing. It's that sort of thing. It chugs. And the drums, I guess, do their thing. And the vocalist, he has what alternates between a powerful 90s rock voice and something yellier and then something screamier. There's 3 levels. I didn't expect that. Also, there's a guy in the corner who makes noises in the back of the room, and I guess that's a thing. You got to have a guy in the back of the room making noises. Sometimes the yelling or the singing is processed through electronic effects, I guess. Almost all of the guitar, no, not almost, all the guitar is distorted. I don't actually remember anything about the drums, but that's what the record sounds like, more or less. To paint a very broad and ugly brush over the entire thing. Let me actually read my notes. Let's see. This sounds exactly like the sort of thing that Radiohead would have recorded OK Computer against. And doesn't it? Because OK Computer is very much about textures and complicated musical stuff, and Letdown has 2 time signatures going at the same time, you know? This is not that sort of music. The music is very simple. It chugs, and there's riffs, and they're pretty good riffs. Bryan, you're going to love this. I'm going to start saying nice things about this record that I listened to for the first time 2 hours ago. The riffs in this record are actually pretty good. Like Mascara, I like how serpentine the bass is. I like that. That qualifies as a riff in and of itself, I think. And then the chorus is more straight ahead, but that's a contrast. I like that. The music is not complicated. The music is effective. There's a lot of tension and release. A lot of da-da. The verses are very good at building tension, and the choruses are very good at releasing it. And again, I can think of other things. Like, I know 3 things about 90s rock music. I know Radiohead, I know the Sundays, and I know Slint. And I can understand how you can have, a moment like this, and then you can come out with records like, Slint's Spiderland, or like Mogwai's, I don't know. I've never listened to Young Team, but I can listen to the last couple songs on Come On, Die Young, and understand how you can go from this tension release, that is rather effectively evoked here, with the guitars and the riffs sort of exploding into more immediately and viscerally satisfying configurations. And then something like Spiderland, where they play the same riff in 7/4 for 2 minutes, and then they play a quieter riff for about 3 minutes, and then it gets loud. And these are both valid approaches. I want to make that clear. I prefer Spiderland to this, but this here is a valid approach, and it certainly helps that the record sounds good. It would be one thing if it were a muddled mess in the midsection and then the bass was sort of down there and the hi-hats were sort of on top and it was just a mess. It's not. There's a good separation of things. There's a good separation of things. You can hear the guitar, the bass, the drums, the voice cleanly. It would be one thing if this were, sort of a brittle and harsh mix. No, it's got a lot of punch to it. It's loud in the right places in the right ways. It has muscle. I'm not a big fan of the screaming, but when the screaming starts, I can sort of let my mind wander backwards into the band where they're doing this fantastic, muscular, powerful stuff. I've mentioned the riffs. I like the riffs. And the parts where he's screaming are higher energy bits where the guitar is playing louder and more, shall we say, fulfilling chords. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. There's obviously, I may have surmised, a inverse relationship between how much I'm willing to buy into this record and how much of the record is spent screaming. Which, again, this isn't my genre. This is my genre. It's a touch heavier than most of what I listen to, and a bit more straightforward than a lot of what I listen to. But you can make strengths of those. You can argue strength into that. I have done so, I think, more or less effectively. Not to say that they're not sonically interesting moments. The tremolo guitar sound that ends, let's see, what's that song called? What is that, Lotion? It's either Lotion or Die the Flu. One of those. There's a tremolo sound that sort of ends out the song that is very interesting. Not as the end of the song. It's close to the end of the song. And that's sort of a thin and brittle tremolo sound that then goes right into a strong, not brittle at all, very thick and meaty chorus guitar sound. Not chorus effect guitar sound, a meaty guitar sound in the chorus, And the tone at the beginning of, what song is that? Be Quiet and Drive? The sound at the beginning of that I quite like. It's sort of a weird shoegazy warble that goes between, two chords. And the main body of the song I quite like as well. I'm going to admit, if I were to go back to any song on this record, it would be Quiet and Drive. Because there's something about, because the song is just, an alternation between two chords. But the way that it gets from chord A to chord B is satisfying in a way that I do not have the technical vocabulary or the familiarity of the genre to explain or draw an apt comparison. I just think that they fit well together. Sometimes I think this would be a good shoegaze record. That if you maybe push back a little on the distortion, pull a little bit of the bass out of the guitar, swap that guitar and reverb, and maybe add it like a Rhodes or something. I don't know. Because it has, it sounds very 90s. It sounds very 90s, which may or may not be a detriment. But I don't know. This isn't a record I'm going to give like a letter grade to because, again, I don't have I'm not in that room long enough to be able to cast that sort of judgment. But is it competently recorded? Yes. Is it competently played? Yes. Is the songwriting good? Well, I don't know. I'd have to listen to like more of this stuff and see, how the songwriting stacks up. But it was convincing for an outsider like me. If you want to know what like grungy metal-y stuff sounded like in the 90s, I guess this might be a good record to check out. I feel like I am glad that I listened to it. I feel like I learned something. I hope that this was a satisfactory review. And thank you. Good night.